Firstly, on to Signature Warning on Signature Television. Right here, we've been talking about the significance of today. Today is 64th year. It is marking the 64th year of Nigeria's independence. And it's been a big milestone, if you ask me. So discussing Nigeria at 64, we have right here in the studio, Chukwudi Ayanoka. That's a PhD, Media and Journalism lecturer, National Publicity Secretary Association of Communication Scholars, Professionals of Nigeria, Spain. Doctor, you're welcome.
All right, thank you very much.
Happy Independence.
Well, I guess it should be the common thing that the people have on their lips. But really, I don't see anything happy about the independence.
Oh, okay.
I must say, yes.
Why is that?
Well, for very evident reasons. Somebody who is 64 years old, you know, that's a milestone, like you said. 64 is not a joke. Someone who was born 64 years ago, one would have expected the person would have, you know, gotten a certain level. If he was a civil servant, the person would have retired and would be enjoying, I don't know if you understand, the benefits of his hard labor. But I can hardly say that about Nigeria today. Nigeria is 64, but Nigeria is still tottering. Nigeria takes one step forward and then two steps backwards. So look at I was just reading through the reel where you were presenting our different heads of states and the achievements or lack of achievements they made during their own time. You know, I mean, it's quite saddening. It's something we need to have a very deep, sober reflection today as Nigeria marks 64 years old. I don't really see anything. Are the citizens happy? That's why when you said happy independence, I said, I don't see anything to be happy about. Are citizens of this country happy? Somebody who is 64, how old do you think the children will be? Shouldn't the children have been all established by now? You understand? Because Nigeria began quite early. If you compare Nigeria with some other countries that gained their independence about the same time, even in Africa, you'd see that Nigeria is actually trailing quite behind. So, I mean, we need to wake up as a nation.
Wow. So what does Nigeria's 64th anniversary mean to you?
I've actually expressed what it means to me because being a scholar myself, I've taken time to study. I can tell you for a fact that Nigeria has had about 7 development plans since 1960, beginning with 1963. We've had different development plans, and I can summarize those development plans for you. The founding fathers, those who we call the founding fathers of Nigeria, articulated for the Nigerian nation, you know, a document that would project Nigeria into a great nation, you know, within a couple of years. But you see, like other nations that even based on their constitution, they've been able to develop or maybe articulated the development plan and then followed it through. Nigeria's case is quite different. So they articulated for Nigeria a nation of free people, a nation that would, you know, produce citizens, you know, that are quite articulated as far as human and life affairs are concerned. They articulated for Nigeria a nation where the people will be economically independent, where you will not have, you know, the nature of displaced persons that we have today. I mean, if you look at the news stories that emanate daily in our newspapers, you'll be quite disappointed. You'll see that Nigerians are the laughing stock of the international community. I don't want to put it lightly. I have also had the experience of traveling, you know, overseas, internationally, and I see how Nigerians are usually profiled. We're profiled as people who are criminals. I've had that experience, you understand, where we are marked even 4 red X's to see that this person is a very dangerous fellow, you need to monitor him. And why is it so? Because our leaders, in quotation, because I don't actually consider them as leaders, because leaders are supposed to actually lead us to El Dorado. They're supposed to lead us to, you know, a better nation. Okay, but then we find out that they are not actually leading us. They are leading themselves more, you know, to so much prosperity. Let me put it that way. And they are very profligate people. You understand? They are quite profligate in their spending. You see them telling us to tighten our belts, but you see them living in such luxury, flying private jets, you know, using yachts, you know, driving very, very expensive vehicles on bad roads that are not fixed. Our hospitals are not functional. So these are the things I think we should. Our educational system has totally collapsed. So these are things we should look at. And that's what the significance of today is to me. It is a day to be reflected upon. It is a day that we need to, begin to talk to ourselves. How do we change? Our elections are not even working. So if you said people should go and wait and elect a better leader, look at our electoral system. Okay? Look at the electoral body. How independent are they? That is the thing that we should ask. I mean, we just had an election in Edo State a couple of days ago. All right, and then what is the outcome of that election? So it appears as if we have totally lost hope as a people. That is actually where we are, and that's something that we need to reflect upon.
Right. So many people think that aren't we choking it so much? I mean, there's rarely any country you could point out to and say they were where they're supposed to be at 60. I mean, it's a developing country. It is what is expected of a developing country. Low life expectancy, an economy that is not really working. It's normal. Even the developed country that we're talking about face these particular problems. I mean, at 60, USA was not like Nigeria. UK, not just name them. So, aren't we pushing the boundaries so much? Shouldn't we give ourselves some breathing space, to go through this process and then get to that point at the end of the day?
Okay, there's something very peculiar about Nigeria, and I like the word you used, choking. Aren't we choking it too much? Do you know that Nigerians have been asphyxiated? We have been so choked that we cannot breathe. There's something very peculiar about Nigeria. That peculiarity is that we are a blessed nation. We have so much. I think we keep using words abundant resources in our soil. Nigeria is a nation. We're blessed with mineral resources. We're blessed with human resources. We have very intelligent, very bright people. Because when you see them in other shores, in other climes, you see that they are succeeding. We have people like Philip Emeagwali. You remember the guy who, you can't talk about development of computers today and even the AI we have without actually mentioning somebody like Philip Emeagwali, who was born in our soil here. We have several other examples. You have we have so much resources, and then what are we doing with it? Why don't we compare ourselves with other nations that have such resources? Okay, so we have nations like Saudi Arabia. Okay? So where are they today? That's the question you should ask yourself. What about nations like South Korea? You talked about developing nations because we call ourselves developing nations. Don't even classify Nigeria as a developing nation, sadly. You understand? Now let me even use South Korea as a class because I've mentioned them. Do you realize that they have nothing in South Korea? Do you realize that they import crude oil from Nigeria, refine it, and still sell it back to us? Are you aware that South Korea, some of the best automobiles that are operating nationally, not just nationally, I'm talking about internationally, globally, that they're manufactured in South Korea? Do you understand that I have heard that nations like South Korea, Malaysia, even the first palm fruit that they got it from Nigeria and planted. We need to verify that, but I've read it severally. And I want to believe that it is true. And what they've been able to do with it. If you look at Nigeria, when Nigeria started, that's why I made reference to our National Development Plan. If you make reference to when Nigeria started, you see that we started on a good footing. Okay? Nigeria was a nation that was feared. Nigeria was a nation that was projected to be a great nation within a very short period. Look at us where we are today. How many nations? You talked about America. America is such a very complex society, and that is the truth. I understand a lot about America. And you talk about even their economy, you cannot compare. What does an average worker earn per hour? I know that these things vary from state to state. Look, even their democracy, the practice of democracy in America, you understand that states are purely independent of the federal. You understand that states take decisions depending on their own peculiarities. Can you say the same thing about Nigeria? What about the UK that you talked about? You see the Prime Minister riding a bus. Haven't you seen stuff of that nature? Other European nations. I've had an opportunity. I've been in a European nation where I saw the governor of a particular state, the state of Salzburg, this is in Austria, he was riding a bicycle to work. You understand? He was stopping to greet. I was in a vehicle with my friend, and who is this person? I said, she is the governor of Salzburg. I don't know if you understand. I asked, I said, is it possible for me to see this woman? And she said, yes, you can. Just book an appointment. I said, okay, because I have this Nigerian mentality. Will it be possible for me to go and sit in the government house after booking an appointment and then the governor will see me within 30 minutes? But I was made to understand that I could see this woman within 30 minutes if I have an appointment. That if she extends it beyond 30 minutes, then I can sue her and I'll get a lot of compensation for that. Can you say that about Nigeria? Nigeria is so blessed. We had an education system. My mom actually, she studied up to standard 4. But I can tell you that she can sit down here and speak even better than I do. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. That's the standard of education that we had at the time. My father, of course, went far beyond that. He was a conservator, okay? But if you see his writing, but these are the things, these people were homegrown. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Can we say that about our children today? Okay? I'm a lecturer. I teach. So I assess my students' work. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I can tell you that averagely, things have actually decayed over time. It has affected every facet of our life. Even our values. Our values have been turned upside down. Because these are the things you must learn. We had values. As Africans, as people, we believed in so many things. Okay, we had respect for elders. A lot of people have argued today and said, well, that even an elder can be cool. I agree. But then again, there is a certain level of respect you should give to elders. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. All right, what about our morality? Decay. Why are we tilting towards that direction? Why is it that today, I mean, you've heard so much about ritual killing. You see ritual, you've seen videos trending, consistently trending, and these are verified videos. I'm not talking about just because they're trending on social media. These are things, because this is part of my area, and I take a lot of interest in that. But that is not to say that there aren't things we can still hold on to. By the way, that is why I said that it is also important for us to have a reflection. For instance, we have the Igbo apprenticeship system, okay, which has made Nigeria quite prominent. I hope you understand. Internationally, these things are discussed at Ivy League universities today. It has been elevated to even a course. I don't know if you understand. Well, not a course per se, but a particular, the curriculum has been included in the curriculum to study how these people are creating wealth. So why don't we begin to look at stuff of that nature? Have you seen these videos about young girls in northern Nigeria? Young girls, Almajiris. Do you see the popular? Somebody was driving through the streets where they were all lined up. Where do you think this is going to take us to? What about Enugu, where we are broadcasting from? What is the situation like? Okay? It is quite pathetic.
So whose fault is it? Is it the fault of the corrupt the corrupt population, or the leaders, or the constitution, or the founding fathers?
I think somebody, John Maxwell, if I'm not mistaken, said that everything starts and ends with leadership. You have to give direction as a leader. That is the truth. Okay? Now, that is not to say that we don't have our collective faults. I don't know if you understand, individually. What are we also doing individually? Those things play a part. But understand that once a leader, sets the pace and insists on it, we've seen it happen severally. Okay? Look at these Asian tigers. Okay? Look at these Asian tigers. Can you look at their laws? Look at a country like China. Do you know that you're executed for corruption? I hope you understand what I'm saying. If, for instance, as a lecturer, you're a corrupt lecturer, let me use my own field as an example, and you've been caught collecting bribe from students, which we call sorting. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Because you're collecting these things so that you can influence their score. What usually happens? Do you pay the penalty at that point? Or is it purely dependent on who you know? I don't know if you understand. This is what happens. So every facet of our life, it has affected, has permeated down the line. But if we had a leader who says, no, I am an anti-corruption crusader, like we had the immediate past president, I think he had lived up to his word. or his promises to the Nigerian nation, I think would have gone much farther. For instance, if you look, I'm not a child. In fact, my last birthday I celebrated my 56th. I'm not one of those who even pretend about how old I am. 56 years, my last birthday. That's a couple of days ago. All right. We had a president, a head of state at the time, Buhari, and we had an assistant, Idiabo. I think those were part of the people that you also showed in your reel. Okay, we had an Idiabo, okay, who was his assistant at the time. We had this war against indiscipline. I was resident in Lagos. Okay, I was, shuttling between Enugu, and I was a very young boy at the time, as a matter of fact. But then I remember very well that if you break queues, you'll be punished for it. Though they had this autocratic hold on the people, there were some of their things, their actions were quite draconian. But you see that people began to fall in line. People were falling in line. War against the discipline. So you come to a filling station, you understand? You don't go to bribe the attendant and he'll tell you, bring your car close. Things like that wasn't happening. Or you come to the bank, when those times you used to use tally number. You don't say, oh, because I have so much money in this bank, I will now beat the queue. Even people within the queue will resist you. Do you understand what I'm saying? And even the people at the counter, no matter, they will appeal to you to please queue. So we can use this as a classic example to show that where a leader has actually set a standard, the people are most likely to follow and walk in that line. So when you're getting out of line, you're whipped back into line. I'm sorry that I have to use words like whip, because in a democracy, it is not expected that such words are used. But then again, if you look at how badly we have deteriorated as a nation, then we may begin to use such terms of whip. We need to whip ourselves back into line. So we need to whip ourselves, which means that we need to begin to self-regulate. What do you do in your own job right now as a presenter with Signature Television? Okay, what are those things that you do that will, if you look at it critically, I'm not just talking about morality, that are even illegal, because there are two different things. Some things may be immoral, but they are not actually illegal. You know what I mean? But then you must begin to self-regulate, to understand that there are certain things you may have to do in your own privacy. You don't bring it out to the public. So that's my thought. A leader sets the pace.
Right. I mean, sometimes I think through these things. I think maybe this is a black thing. North America, North Africa, if you just leave it for a bit, Morocco, Egypt,
I like that.
and the Arabs, call them the Arabs of Africa, from Sudan down, except for South Africa, because of course the whites were there up until 1994. The apartheid ended, and then Nelson Mandela took over. Some people think that maybe if the colonialists stayed a little longer, it would have been a lot better, just like what we're having in South Africa. Do you agree?
I don't agree. I don't agree at all. Actually, part of the corruption that we have today, we're actually introduced by the colonialists.
Really?
Absolutely. And you know that up till today, we're suffering neo-colonialism. We're still a colonized people. Are you aware? Why are we accepting all those IMF and those international bodies, monetary bodies, all those policies?
We accept it because we want to accept it. Not because
it is because of mass of leadership that we have. They do have something on our leaders, against our leaders. Have you forgotten that these our leaders are the same ones that buy choice properties in the North African countries, some of the North African countries mentioned, the South African countries, in Europe, in the United States of America? Do you need to begin to break these things down for you? I know you have this knowledge. Now, what was the quality of the colonial system that was introduced in Nigeria? What was the quality of the colonialization that was introduced in Nigeria? We were made to draw butterflies and study the parts of the butterflies, when these things were not going to be valued. Why were we not taught skills at that point? How to manufacture things? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Even from the very beginning. Look at the model that China is using, the educational model. What has stopped us from copying such model. I have the opportunity of knowing the class of curricula. This is part of a research area, so I understand these things very well. I have looked at our curricula critically. A lot of people have argued that universities are no longer doing well, and I laugh at them. I said, look, go back to the primary school and look at our curricula. Can we begin to redirect our children? Because it's a direct answer to your question. So it is not just, it's not an African thing. Why I'm saying it's not an African thing, you know, because my argument, I need to make you understand where I'm saying that. Because I've mentioned one classic person. I mentioned something like Philip Emeagwali. Is he not black? I don't know if you understand. Because you said it's not, is it a black thing or an African thing? If it's a black thing, then why are blacks succeeding outside of our shores? That is the classic example. Now, even if you say it's an African thing, why are those who are blacks, who are Africans, also succeeding outside of our shores? Okay? So we've had blacks who have done so well. We've had Africans who have done so well outside of our shores. Okay? It is, some people argue and say that we have our culture, our custom, the custom of Ebiabe Mado. I'm sorry that I have to speak a little Igbo, but I'll interpret. Ebiabe Mado. I don't understand what I'm saying. So they used to justify corruption. What it means is that a proverb that says that when you come to a person's house, you don't come empty-handed. You come with something. Even in the church, it is consistently preached. Can we begin to look at stuff of that nature and begin to change our mentality? It will help us better. Why don't we become a productive person? We had somebody during the last campaign who preached from from consumption to production. I think these are the kind of things we should be looking at and emphasizing. We know they give shishi. Those are things people laugh and say, oh, this person is very stingy. What? Go to Europe. Go and be hungry and go and look for somebody to beg for food to come and lunch. Or, you know, you're lazy. Please send me data. Who will do that for you? You must get you must get out of that bed or get out of that chair and go and work. These are the things we begin to emphasize. Let our wealth be productive. So if you have bought a jet, a private jet, we want to know your source of income. How did you get about that jet? Yesterday, IMT, a set of students, they signed out. I'm sorry that I have to make this reference. Do you know students sign out? That's, they had finished their exams. Okay? And I drove into school yesterday and I saw lots of luxury vehicles. Vehicles were streaming into the car. I had to leave immediately. I mean, because I could imagine the traffic gridlock that would build up later. Luxury vehicles. A lot of these vehicles were actually hired by the students themselves. So they will fill these vehicles and then they'll stick their heads out of the vehicle. It was an accident. I understand about 2 or 3 people lost their lives, students, yesterday. An accident. When are we begin to, I mean, when I went to school, there was really nothing like that. Who had an interest in stuff of that nature? When you even finish your exams, particularly, because we're talking about people who have just finished their final exams. So can we begin to change our culture? See what it is leading us to. That's why I have to make reference to this. So it is really not an African thing or a black thing. It is just that, just like some people have actually postulated, or they said that we are cursed with bad leadership. The class of people that we found leading us as a people have led us astray. That's just the truth. And that is why our systems are not working at all. Look at our systems. When I talk about our system, I'm talking about the institutions. Where you have a working institution, it's not because Americans are perfect people. You have very corrupt people in America. You have very corrupt people in Europe. You have very corrupt people in South Africa. Okay? But where even South Africa, they are not doing as well as they were before. I hope you know that. They are suffering electricity shortages. They have a lot of things with their economy, as I'm speaking to you right now. They have a lot of issues, as it were. Compared to when I visited South Africa. And, I remember how South Africa was being praised on account of their... So things are changing.
All right. Talking about leadership, our president, came out this morning to give a speech to Nigerians, and he recognized the challenges that people are facing. Also, assured citizens of his administration's commitment to alleviating hunger by, bringing sustainable reforms. to alleviate suffering and improve the economy. Do you think there's going to be hope coming out from everything he has said this morning?
You know, I write speeches. That's the truth. That's one of the things I do. And I think I'm quite skilled in speech writing. It is something I trained in over time. So this was from a speech writer. Okay? So it's just to make the president look good. And nobody's assured by the words of the president. I must be honest with you. Because the president has actually made several promises in the past. So what you do, what are the records of, it's just like an examiner. I have over time, and I have told you things over time. Okay? So now this is the test period. So I look at, how have you been able to keep those things? So the president has made us several promises. And now he's saying that he understands. So who caused the problem? That is the first question that we must ask. I saw a meme, currently concerning stuff of this nature. So the president is saying that he understands that people are suffering. The person actually used a very terrible word, which I'm not going to use. But the query was, how about God? So who caused the problem? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So who caused this problem? What are the things that led to this problem, this situation that we are in today? It is the decisions that the leadership has made, the president has made. You removed subsidy, you floated the naira. I don't know if you understand. The implications of all this, in fact, remove subsidy in quotes, because I understand that we're still paying subsidy. We've been seeing the back and forth from NNPC. They keep telling us NNPC is a private concern. How now? So you're a private concern and you're telling us how much we're going to buy petrol now. So what makes you the private concern? A lot of deceit. You know what I mean? So it is just a speech that was crafted, you understand, so that the president can read it to the people. And I'm sorry, I'm being very blunt. That is what it is. Because I'm a speech writer. If the president were even to pay me to write a speech, I'll even probably write a better speech.
But
he will make this presentation.
But those things are basically inevitable. He had mentioned that, the removal was just inevitable. And you could say that there has been an immediate impact in our currency. Well, not necessarily our currency in terms of exchange rate, but I'm talking about debt to GDP ratio. It used to be 97%, but now it's 68%. There's more monies available for the government and state government to do, infrastructure development and maybe some welfare reforms. But can it get worse? Because I remember during the Obasanjo's period, people were still unsatisfied with his administration. People say, well, you know what, we need to change this government and get somebody on board. Yar'Adua came, God bless his soul, he left after 2 years through death.
And he actually reduced petrol price.
He did.
You need to make reference to that.
Yes, too. Jonathan came, we were still unsatisfied. And then they say, you know what, a new government would show us a very good path to growth and development. Buhari came. And it looked like Buhari was the Messiah, but at the end of the day, we found out it was even worse than Jonathan. And then we have a Tinubu. So every government that comes, we tend to be create things. It tends to be worse than the previous. Will it get ever worse, or
will it get better?
Will it ever get worse? Better. Worse than what we are.
Okay. Let me start from the word. I want to hang on to the word that you used. I love words a lot. I'm very careful when you said you use the word inevitable. Inevitable. Let me just speak that word. Removing the subsidy was inevitable. That's according to the president. I don't agree. That is one point. And I'll tell you why I don't agree. I don't agree because you have several other nations, like some of the nations you even mentioned, the great nations of the world. Don't they have subsidies? Don't they have welfare for people who don't have jobs? For instance, in the United States of America. Okay, there's a certain level of welfare. Okay, as they are looking for job for you, not that they're just paying you indefinitely, but you see, you have agencies where you register and you have some kind of skill, and they're looking for where to fix you. What about UK? Don't they have subsidies?
But it's not on fuel, on gas. It's on something else. Is it on food or on education or in
So where do we have the subsidy? Tell me now. Where is our own subsidy? Remember that we're a blessed nation. We're a nation that produces crude oil. Don't forget. Always have this at the back of your mind, because that is our own advantage. You know what I mean? That's what we must cling on to. You use what you have to get what you need. Remember that even the crude oil, you have other byproducts of crude oil. When they talk about this thing, they say they have, the people have bought fuel. They only bring in, how many do they bring for us? How many? They bring in diesel, they bring in petrol, and they bring in kerosene, okay? Including aviation fuel. You know what I mean? What about the other byproducts of that crude oil? What is happening to them? And remember, it's just like somebody who farms. You have a farm. You understand? You harvest your yam. Then you now export your yam. Somebody will now cook it for you. And bring it in different varieties. Roast yam.
Fried one.
Fried yam. You know what I mean?
Pounded yam.
Think about it from that perspective. Pounded yam, thank you very much. We must look. So it is not inevitable. It wasn't inevitable to remove subsidy. We needed to think about several things, even though a lot of them were happening. They made reference to some of the presidential candidates in 2023 who said that they will remove subsidy. They will remove subsidy. You know, we don't have the benefit of knowing how they would have removed subsidy. What I was going to be in the huge manner with which this present government removed subsidy. How much were you buying petrol? We were buying petrol for 197 naira, if I'm not mistaken. I live very close by, and I buy petrol at Northwest. You understand? And I know, they sell petrol. I think they're one of the cheapest. I'm sorry that I have to mention this. I'm more like advertising for them, but I needed to make this emphasis. Okay? So, I know how much, and I was very unlucky that I didn't buy petrol. I had it in mind that something was going to change, but I didn't realize it was going to be so bad. From 187, it shot up to about 600. Just check it. So even a lecturer like me, a senior lecturer like me, what is my pay? My resources have so shrunk. How much were we buying bread? How much are you buying bread now? Are you feeding your family well? I can't say that for myself. You have to struggle. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that. But will things ever get worse? I understand your question. All these things will be dependent on the quality of leadership that we have. All these things, and as it is now, I think things will get worse. I'm sorry. But what I'm predicting is based on the earlier statements we made concerning our institutions. If we don't have an institution that will enable us, elect the right leaders to take over, because things can change. We've had nations who have actually been through worse situations than we were, but they had to take drastic actions, and it was purely dependent on the leadership of that country. You understand what I'm saying? Where somebody now came up and said, no, once you are caught for any form of corruption, death. And by the time it began to, you understand, as ministers were being convicted, there were being, people now had, because the laws, institutions are very critical in whipping us back to line. Without such credible institutions where you cannot depend on the courts, because most of what we have today are the courts that are the ones deciding who takes up positions of leadership in Nigeria today. I can back it up. We have precedents to show that is exactly the same. So people elect a leader, and then the courts say no, based on technicalities. You understand what I'm saying? So we have legal rigmaroles, legal technicalities, all these things are exploited, and then we're entrusted with the wrong people. So that's why things will definitely get worse. Because we have people who have entrenched interest. You know that people who own Nigeria, just in case you don't know. But I know you know. You know that people who own Nigeria. They own Nigeria. Well, that's why most times when you make reference to colonialism, I laugh. You understand? Because we're still a colonized people. I once asked a question. It was the British, the consular to Nigeria. So he was at a cocktail. So he was making reference to, just like, the former prime minister, where he was caught saying that we are fantastically corrupt people. So he made such a statement. This was in Abuja. I was attending the cocktail. And we're standing together. And I made reference. I said, but excuse me, That is true that Nigerians are quite corrupt, but I'm just wondering, why is it that all the Nigerians who have corruptly enriched themselves and bought properties in UK, that you haven't been able to expose these people? Isn't Britain itself corrupt? Everybody looked at me. Nobody could answer that question, but we all knew the answer. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. So we all know the answer, as it were. We are still a colonized people. We need to begin to repatriate those resources. How did Britain become even what it is today? You know, so we are in a conundrum, as it were, as a nation. And the only thing that can change it is leadership. If we have a sincere leadership, I believe we can make a lot of progress as a people.
Right. I mean, if you look at everything, frankly, we started having this chaotic situation when subsidy was removed and fuel price popped. You know, everyone, complained about it because everything practically is affected by transportation, and the only transport means is through the use of fuel. Just recently we started using CNG and deduction of CNG and other means of transportation. The reforms have been introduced. Do you see some future in such a way that we'll get to a point like we used to have during the NITEL, where NITEL was the sole supplier of telecommunications network, and then it was opened, and then private sectors pumped in, and then prices of things reduced. Do you see that happening in such a way that the prices of fuel will not be? Because I mean, I've checked the prices of fuel across the African continent for countries who actually have oil. The product is actually very cheaper than Nigeria. I mean,
fantastic.
If you
I'm
look
happy
at,
you're making the point.
yeah. So I'm wondering, because those countries have also, had the opportunity to open up their space in order for you to have competition, so you can have cheaper fuel. So Dangote is in, and I'm sure some other persons who is also looking. BUA is also building one in Akwa Ibom. So do you see a situation where if NNPC puts its act together, bringing back to life the Port Harcourt refinery and bringing back to life Kaduna and of course the one in Warri, a situation where Dangote will have a run for its money so that prices of things would actually come down, especially as it concerns fuel?
Yeah, I like this because we call what you said envisioning. This is just something that you have in your head and you believe is going to happen. But let me tell you something, this CNG thing won't work.
Why wouldn't it work?
It won't work because there are people who have entrenched interest in that petrol, in the crude oil of this nation, which has been actually sold upfront. You know that. And, they make their money, by sending. Remember, even the subsidy itself, there's a lot of fraud around the subsidy thing. And you think they're going to give it up just like that? They will not. This is what Nigeria has been. So I'm just predicting. I'm telling you what will write this thing down today. Why do you think they have delayed so much in the CNG? Remember that the president promised us that within 6 months, you understand, that we're going to have CNG buses. I think the first intro was supposed to be 3,000 CNG buses. Where are the CNG buses? So when you now begin to ride CNG vehicles and all these things are converted, what will happen to the crude oil and the petrol? What will happen to their refineries overseas? What will happen to their deals? You understand, with these colonial nations who are still colonizing us, neo-colonialism. What will happen to all these things? So they have entrenched interest. Their interest is the money that they are making. And that's just a fact. That's for a fact. We must understand it from that perspective. If we don't, then we begin to hope on hopelessness.
So how much money can we really want? I mean, if you are there for 6 months doing these things, you would have made a gazillion of amounts you cannot finish for your lifetime.
Yes.
So how much can you really make?
That's the thing. Those guys are never satisfied now.
Because I'm just
the
thinking
more money
about
you
it,
make,
like,
the more money you want to make. They are never
For the
satisfied with what they have made.
I mean, when you say the more monies you make, the more monies, that's why I keep saying, is it an African thing? The more monies you make is the more monies you want to make. Why is it not the existence abroad?
It is not an African thing because abroad they have institutions. We don't have working institutions in Africa. That is why. If we have working institutions in Africa like you have in Asia, in not all nations in Asia, by the way, but in some of the Asian nations that I've given as examples today, and we have working institutions like it applies in the United States of America, and it applies in some other, like in Canada, it's part of North America, and the Central American states, you'll see that things will begin to take shape. Okay? So if you have made zillions of dollars, okay, as it were, and these things are confiscated and thrown back to the state, and then you're in prison rotting away, those who are planning to make those things using these corrupt means will begin to watch their movements and say, no, I'm not going to take this part because I'm going to end up like this leader. That is what happens when institutions work. People work. In a school system, look, I've been in a school system for a very long time. I can tell you that I've also watched different leaderships. And I have seen where a leadership is laissez-faire and people do what they like. You can use that as a classic example. People do what they like. And you have seen a leader who comes in and becomes very, very keen on ridding the system of corruption so that everybody comes back into life. It is the same thing. It is still same leadership. If we have a sincere leadership, a leadership that means to work for people. Look, let me tell you, I'm not saying that there will not be pockets of corruption, because you cannot totally eradicate corruption. Understand that from that perspective. But you know, whenever they are doing it, they'll be doing it hiding. You know, Nigeria began initially with 10%. This is some of the things that were introduced during the colonial times. So you award a contract and you get 10%. That's how it started. You know what? It became very, very popular. I'm sure you heard about somebody like Okotie-Eboh, all right, the then finance minister, and how regal the man was. You know what I mean? He lived large. You know, he lived quite large, like some other people. But his only case is that, I mean, he was quite flamboyant in his own lifestyle, and he was showing off. But others were also collecting their 10%. The 10% has increased. I'm sorry, there was a time I was involved in federal contracts. I can tell you the kind of things people demand. Sometimes, I'm using this as a classic example. Sometimes you hear people say, look, this contract will be maybe each item of this cup. Let me assume that this will cost individually 2,000. And they'll tell you, okay, go and make it 20,000. Take your 2,000. Just bring me my 18,000. This thing happens all the time. It's a routine, it's a norm. We pretend about it. We pretend that these things don't happen. You heard about the prison, the issue with the Idris. Exactly. You heard the issue about it. It's a norm. I'm saying it here, it's a norm. Somebody just wrote quite recently about it and I read and I shook my head. These things happen all the time. I even understand that I've heard, because I know I'm on live television and I'm speaking, I have even heard that there are cases where prisoners are switched. So somebody else comes to serve your sentence. I have heard cases of that nature. It is not peculiar to Nigeria, as a matter of fact, but it's the things that are happening. So you understand these things.
Wow.
Do you ever have hope for this country? Because
Do
the
I have
way
hope?
you are sounding.
Yes, because we must sound.
The way you professed.
No, this is the way it is. The only hope we have is if we can get our institutions to start working, and we have, so that when I talk about, remember that I made a reference. I said there are certain things we can still hold on to and be very proud about. And I made one reference. I talked about the Igbo apprenticeship system. You know what I mean? So can we begin to pick, there are several other instances of that nature. We have seen videos of young people who have, manufactured, they are not like the inventors, quite all right. We've seen young people who have manufactured cars, done all manner of things, manufactured phone, using wood, I don't know if you understand, if you've seen, these are things we can hold on to. Nigeria is not a hopeless nation. Don't forget. But what I'm saying is that if we continue in the manner that we are, because I need to make this clarification, if we continue in the manner we are, things are going to get worse, definitely. Because a direct answer to his question, will things ever get worse? Yes, if we continue like this. But if we change, okay, if we are actually, because we talk about Nigeria as a nation, is Nigeria really a nation? People have argued about nationhood and defined the nation, conceptualize it and operationalize it in different ways. Is Nigeria really a nation? Do we understand what it means to be a nation? What's your loyalties? Your loyalty to your friends and your family, number one, before the Nigerian nation. But you've seen other people in other nations where the sun, when you do something They will bring you out to go and say, they will be the ones reporting you. Do we see things of that nature? So we have thieves, but you say, no, leave this thief. This thief is my brother. Is my thief. I don't know if you understand. Do you understand? So things can change. Things can some people are now pushing for regionalism. I support that move. Because when we were when we had regions, there was so much competition among the regions. And this competition was healthy. Each region was trying to outdo the other. Can we begin to look at stuff of that nature? Perhaps it will help us.
Can it really work now? Because it's not the same thing anymore. At the time, it was just the eastern region,
the three regions, the northern, the eastern, and the western.
So yes. Can it really work now? Because some people are saying instead of regionalism, create more states, make it balanced, and then continue the way it is. I mean, rather than
these things were actually designed to polarize Nigeria.
That's by Gowon.
It wasn't just Gowon himself. Please, we need to be fair. You understand? I mean, he was the head of state, but then he wasn't the brain behind a lot of these decisions that were taken. You understand what I'm saying? We understand there were elites, in a particular region who, wanted to diminish the strengths, you understand what I'm saying, of the regions, as it were, and on account of the civil war, He
was the head of state at the time.
Yes,
so
he
led
he
this.
was.
So you can't take him. Are you saying you're not blaming him for the balkanization?
No, what I'm saying, of course, he will be he will take part of the blame, but you cannot solely say it was solely his decision. That's the point I'm making. Even our current president.
If it's signed off on it,
it's so easy for us to sit down here and say these things in the manner that we are saying it. But a lot of things go on behind before somebody leader is pushed to take certain decisions. Okay, so that's where the balkanization of Nigeria began. State's creation, yes, I agree that the Southeast is actually had been treated fairly. Okay? But then will creation of more states solve this problem? No, sir, it will not. It is because the states feel they are quite independent. Everybody wants to become a leader in his state. Okay? You have a particular local government somewhere in the north. By the time you aggregate all the local governments in the southeast, it's not even up to the number of that particular local government in the north. Not because they have a larger population or even a larger land mass, but just because of political expediency. Reason some people have decided that this is what we want. And these things are implemented in exactly the same way it is. Now, I believe that the way the zones, what we call the different zones of Nigeria is presently constituted, we can work as regions. Why can't it be allowed? We can work as regions.
Regions as governors of these regions or president of these regions, or how do you intend to achieve that?
Somebody has actually, if you have read details concerning those who are proposing these regions, they are looking at having, so you have president of the Nigerian nation, who will be like a ceremonial president. You know what I mean? Then you have, I don't know whether they can be called prime ministers or
governors of this region,
generals. No, you already have governors. It will be impossible for us to say automatically which governor will even like to give up his own state. You understand? So you can have there should be some kind of cooperation, just like some people are pushing for the Southeast today. Look at the creation of. Let me give you an example. It just came to me now.
Just 1 minute because we're out of time.
That's right.
Okay, just 1 minute. Just go ahead. Just
okay. We're almost done. All right. So what I'm saying is that look at the Southeast Development Commission and all the other. The Southwest is now pushing for its own commission.
Yes.
So why don't we have those things as bodies so that the states within these individual zones can partner on their own and build their zones?
Profound. That's a good way to live it. I want to say a very big thank you to Chukwudi. Thank you so much, Dr. Chukwudi.
Thank you very much, Charles. Good to see you again.
My pleasure.
And thank you, Bibian, I believe.
Belinda.
Oh, Belinda. So I just wanted, does this Bibian keep coming into my head? Thank you, Belinda, for having me. Thank you.